In a quiet, small town of Ohio, a young, paralyzed girl watched her world grow smaller every day, until a 25-year-old mechanic walked into her life with nothing but determination and a toolbox. They said her electric wheelchair was impossible to fix, but what happened next would restore everyone's faith in hope. Kindness and second chances. Like, share, and subscribe. And tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get started. In the small, peaceful town of Maple Springs, Ohio, the days often started with the sound of birds and the slow hum of traffic. But for Emily Carter, 22, mornings had become heavy with silence. Once full of laughter and movement, her life had grown smaller ever since her electric wheelchair had broken down 3 months ago. The chair wasn't just a piece of equipment, it was her freedom. Without it, she was trapped inside the same 4 walls, watching the seasons change through the same dusty window pane. Her father tried to help, pushing her to the porch in an old manual chair. But even that took effort. He couldn't always manage. Every morning, Emily would scroll through her phone, searching for repair shops, calling anyone who might know how to fix her wheelchair. But every conversation ended the same way. "Sorry, miss, those models are outdated. Parts aren't available anymore. Or worse, even if we could fix it, the cost would be more than buying a new one." Each rejection chipped away at her hope, until one evening she told her father, maybe it's time to stop trying. He didn't answer. He just looked away, pretending to study the flickering light bulb above their dinner table. A few blocks away, Jake Miller, a 25-year-old mechanic, was closing his small garage for the night. His hands were stained with grease, his shirt marked with engine oil. Most people in town knew Jake as the guy who could fix anything that had wheels: motorcycles, tractors, even old lawnmowers. He'd grown up fixing broken machines for neighbors when he was just a kid, after losing his father, a mechanic himself, in a roadside accident. But while Jake's hands were rough, his heart was soft. He often repaired things for free, believing that every machine deserves a second chance, just like people. That night, Jake stopped by Mary's Diner, his usual spot for late coffee and pie. The diner buzzed with chatter, the sound of forks scraping against plates, and the smell of brewed coffee filling the air. In the corner booth sat Emily and her father. Jake didn't know them, but he couldn't help overhearing their quiet conversation. "She called 3 more places today," her father said, stirring his coffee slowly. "Nobody's willing to try." Emily's voice was low, almost breaking. "It's fine, Dad. I'll get used to being home." Something in that tone made Jake pause mid-bite. He recognized that sound, the sound of someone giving up. After a few minutes, he walked over, awkward but determined. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "I couldn't help overhearing. You said something about a wheelchair? Maybe I can take a look." Her father looked up skeptically. "Son, it's an electric wheelchair, not a car." Jake smiled faintly. "A machine's a machine. They all have a heart inside, wires, gears, power. I can't promise anything, but I can try." Emily hesitated, scanning his face for sincerity. There was something genuine about his confidence. Not arrogance, just quiet belief. She nodded. "If you really want to, it's in our garage." The next afternoon, Jake arrived at the Carter home with a small toolbox and a cup of coffee in hand. The wheelchair sat in the corner, covered with a thin layer of dust. He crouched beside it, inspecting every wire, switch, and circuit board. His brow furrowed as he noticed melted insulation, broken fuses, and rusted battery contacts. This wasn't an easy fix. It was a nightmare. Still, something inside him whispered, "Don't give up." As the hours passed, Jake carefully dismantled the chair, labeling every screw and part. Emily watched from the doorway, her eyes following his movements. He worked quietly, focused, sometimes humming to himself. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of curiosity instead of despair. "You really think you can fix it?" she finally asked. He didn't look up. "I think I can figure it out. Might take some time, but if it runs once, it can run again." Jake spent the next few evenings studying the wheelchair's wiring diagrams online. The manufacturer had gone out of business years ago, which meant no new parts. He posted on repair forums, contacted salvage yards, and even searched through piles of discarded electronics behind his garage. One night, he found an old e-bike motor that could fit the wheelchair's frame with some modification. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Emily's father brought him sandwiches and coffee, insisting on paying, but Jake refused. "Just let me use your garage a few more days," he said. "That'll be enough." Each night, Emily would roll to the doorway in her manual chair and watch him work. The garage smelled of oil and soldering fumes, but it also carried a strange warmth, the feeling of hope being rebuilt piece by piece. By the fifth night, Jake had replaced the motor, rewired the power lines, and built a custom control circuit from spare parts. But when he pressed the switch, nothing happened. The silence felt heavier than before. He leaned back, exhaling hard. Emily saw the frustration in his eyes. "It's okay," she said softly. "You've already done more than anyone else." But Jake shook his head. "No, not yet. I'm not walking away from this." That night he stayed late, staring at the wiring diagrams under a dim lamp. His hands trembled from exhaustion, but his mind raced. He suddenly realized one of the ground wires was misaligned, something so small, yet so crucial. With a deep breath, he made the correction, tightened the connection, and turned the key again. This time a faint hum filled the room. The wheels jerked slightly, then rolled forward. Jake laughed, a deep relieved sound, and Emily covered her mouth, tears flooding her eyes. Her father rushed over, his hands shaking. "You did it, son. You actually did it." Jake looked at Emily and smiled. "Guess it wasn't impossible after all." For the first time in months, Emily moved forward under her own power. The chair wasn't just repaired, it was alive again. She circled the small driveway, her laughter echoing under the night sky. Neighbors peeked from their windows, drawn by the sound of something rare, joy. Jake wiped his hands on his shirt, trying to hide his smile. It wasn't just about fixing a wheelchair anymore. It was about giving someone a piece of their life back. As he packed his tools, Emily stopped him. "You didn't have to do this for me," she said quietly. "I didn't do it for you," he replied. "I did it because I believe nothing's truly broken, just waiting for the right hands to care again." That night, as Jake drove home, the empty road felt lighter somehow. The world hadn't changed much, but for one girl in Maple Springs, it had become whole again. The following morning, the sunlight streamed through the Carter family's front window, casting soft patterns on the floor. Emily sat quietly, her fingers brushing the armrest of her now living wheelchair. Every movement felt like a miracle, smooth, steady, responsive. The gentle hum of the motor was like a song she hadn't heard in months. When she looked up, her father was standing by the kitchen counter, his eyes glistening. He didn't say anything, and he didn't need to. The silence between them said it all. After weeks of hopelessness, their home finally felt alive again. Later that day, Jake returned to check everything once more. He was tired, his eyes heavy from long nights of work, but the sight of Emily smiling made every sleepless hour worth it. "How's she running?" he asked with a grin. "Better than me," Emily joked. "Feels like it's brand new." Jake crouched down, adjusting a few bolts. "Good. Just keep it charged and clean. She's got a few more years in her at least." Her father handed Jake a folded envelope. "You've done something no one else could. Please take this, it's not much." Jake looked down at the money, then back at them. "Keep it. Buy her a new battery when this one starts getting weak." He said it so simply, like it was nothing, but Emily could see in his tired eyes that it was everything. Word spread quickly through Maple Springs. The small-town mechanic, who fixed an impossible wheelchair, had become the talk of the diner, the grocery store, and even the local radio. People started calling Jake's garage, asking if he could look at their broken mobility scooters, power chairs, even children's bikes. He hadn't planned on becoming a hero. He just wanted to help someone in need. But now, something inside him was shifting. One afternoon, while Jake was repairing a lawnmower, a van pulled up outside his shop. Two men stepped out carrying a broken power chair. "You're the guy who fixed that girl's wheelchair, right?" one of them asked. Jake nodded, My brother's chair quit last month. No one can fix it. We heard you're good with impossible things. Jake chuckled softly. Let's take a look. He spent hours working on it, cleaning corroded wires, testing circuits and adapting spare parts. When the motor finally hummed again, the man's brother, a veteran with a missing leg, saluted Jake with tears in his eyes. You gave me back more than wheels, he said quietly. That line stuck with Jake long after they left. Meanwhile, Emily's world was expanding again. For months, she'd been invisible, just another person stuck at home. Now people stopped her on the street, asking if she was the girl from the story. The local news even reached out for an interview. Sitting under studio lights with her wheelchair gleaming beside her, Emily smiled nervously at the reporter. So, what went through your mind? When that chair came back to life, she paused, choosing her words carefully. I realized there are two kinds of people in this world, those who say something can't be done, and those who quietly prove them wrong. The story aired that evening, showing clips of Jake working in his garage, sparks flying as he soldered wires, his name written in grease on his shirt. The segment ended with Emily driving along a quiet park path, her laughter echoing. Within days, the video went viral. Thousands of people shared it, writing comments like, "We need more people like Jake," and faith in humanity restored. Jake was overwhelmed by the attention. His phone buzzed non-stop with messages from strangers, parents of disabled kids, veterans, and even elderly folks asking if he could help. One message stood out from a woman in Texas. My son's chair has been broken for a year. We can't afford to fix it. I wish we had someone like you here. Jake read it 3 times before setting his phone down, staring at the dark shop ceiling. That night he couldn't sleep. He realized what he wanted to do next wasn't about fixing machines anymore. It was about fixing lives. A week later, Jake visited Emily's house again, this time with a notebook full of sketches. I've been thinking, he said. There are hundreds of people who can't afford to repair their mobility chairs. What if we started something, a program to fix them for free? Emily's eyes lit up. Like a foundation? He nodded. Something like that. I don't know what to call it yet, but it could make a difference. Her father leaned in. You've already made a difference, son. But if you do this, you'll change lives. That night they sat together at the dining table, brainstorming ideas. Wheels of hope, Emily said suddenly. Jake looked up. That's perfect. Over the next few weeks, the small-town mechanic's garage turned into a workshop filled with hope. Volunteers came in, high school students, retired engineers, even other mechanics who wanted to learn. They collected donated wheelchairs, repaired them, and gave them away to people who needed them most. The first giveaway event took place in the town square. 10 chairs lined up, each one shining under the sun. Emily handed out the first one to an elderly woman who had been homebound for years. Tears and smiles filled the air. Cameras rolled and the story reached national news networks. Jake stood at the back, watching silently as people cheered. He wasn't used to being the center of attention. When a reporter approached him and asked how it felt to become a hero, he just shrugged. I'm no hero, he said softly. I just fix things that people give up on. As weeks turned into months, Wheels of Hope grew beyond Maple Springs. Donations arrived from across the country. Universities offered to partner with Jake to design more efficient, low-cost mobility devices. What began as one repair job in a dusty garage had turned into a movement. One evening, after a long day of work, Jake sat outside his shop, watching the sunset. The air smelled of rain, and the streetlights flickered on. Emily rolled up beside him, her chair gleaming in the orange light. You've changed a lot of lives, she said. Jake smiled, staring at the horizon. Maybe, but you know what I've learned? What? That sometimes the hardest things to fix aren't machines. It's people, their faith, their hope. And when you bring that back, that's the real repair. Emily nodded quietly, her eyes reflecting the golden sky. You fixed mine, she whispered. He turned toward her with a gentle smile. No, Emily, you fixed yourself. I just gave you back the wheels to get there. As the sun disappeared behind the rooftops, the two sat in silence, a mechanic and a girl whose story had started with something broken and ended with something beautifully whole. The morning of the first Wheels of Hope anniversary came quietly. The town of Maple Springs was buzzing with anticipation. Banners stretched across the square, chairs and tables neatly arranged, and people arriving from nearby cities to witness what had become a local legend. A single spark of kindness had grown into something that now carried light into hundreds of homes. The workshop, once a small, dusty garage, had transformed into a full-fledged repair center equipped with tools, donated parts, and volunteers. On the wall hung a framed photo of Emily sitting in her repaired wheelchair, smiling next to Jake, the picture that had gone viral and started it all. Jake arrived early that morning, wearing his usual oil-stained jacket and a quiet smile. He still didn't like speeches or cameras, but today wasn't about him. It was about the people whose lives had been touched by the movement. As he walked through the workshop, he greeted each volunteer by name, students, veterans, retirees, all working together to prepare the newly restored chairs for donation. The air smelled of machine oil, paint, and hope. He stopped beside a young volunteer soldering a wire. "How's it coming?" Jake asked. "Almost done," the boy replied. "This one's going to a kid in Chicago. His mom said he hasn't been outside in 6 months. Jake nodded silently, feeling that familiar heaviness in his chest, the kind that came when he realized how much one small act could ripple outward. Outside, Emily was helping set up the stage. Over the past year, she'd become the heart of Wheels of Hope, coordinating with families and hospitals, organizing fundraisers, and sharing their stories online. The once shy girl who barely left her house was now a voice of strength and compassion. Her chair had new scratches and stickers, each one a memory of a journey made possible by freedom. When Jake joined her, she looked up with a smile. "You ready for your big moment, Mr. Mechanic?" He chuckled. "You know I hate that stuff." "You'll do fine," she said. "Besides, people need to hear from the one who started all this." As the sun climbed higher, the town square filled with people. Families in wheelchairs, children laughing, reporters setting up cameras. The mayor took the stage first, speaking about community and the power of kindness. When Jake's name was called, applause erupted. He hesitated for a second, rubbing his hands together before stepping forward. The microphone felt too loud, the crowd too big. But when he saw Emily smiling in the front row, everything calmed. "I don't really do speeches," he began, his voice steady but humble. "A year ago, I was just fixing engines in a small garage. I didn't plan for any of this. I just met someone who needed help, someone who refused to let life stop moving, even when her wheels did." He glanced at Emily, who blinked back tears. "All I did was fix a chair. But what I realized after that day is, sometimes fixing something small can fix something much bigger, maybe even someone's faith in the world." The crowd fell silent. Jake continued. "Every chair you see here today was once broken, forgotten, or thrown away, just like people sometimes are. But with care and time, anything or anyone can be brought back to life. That's what Wheels of Hope is about. Giving movement back to those who need it, and proving that nothing's truly impossible." He ended his speech simply. "Thank you for believing in something that started with just a screwdriver and a little bit of heart." When he stepped down, Emily was there to greet him. "That was perfect," she said softly. "You made half the town cry." Jake laughed awkwardly. "Guess I'm better with wires than words," but inside, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Later that afternoon, the giveaway began. Dozens of restored wheelchairs lined the square, each with a name tag. Families came forward one by one, receiving them with tears and gratitude. Jake moved quietly among the crowd, shaking hands, adjusting brakes, offering simple words like, "Take care of her," or "She'll roll just fine now." One man, a middle-aged father with a disabled son, grabbed Jake's hand and whispered, "You didn't just fix a chair, you fixed my boy's childhood." Jake couldn't reply. His throat tightened too much to speak. As evening approached, the square glowed with golden light. Music played softly while kids raced around in their new wheelchairs, laughter filling the air. Emily rolled beside Jake, both of them watching in silence. "You ever think about how far this went?" she asked. "All from that night at the diner." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I guess good things start small." She turned her head toward him. "You ever wonder why you stopped that night?" "You didn't even know me." Jake thought for a moment before answering. "Maybe I saw a bit of myself. My dad used to say, if you can bring one broken thing back to life, you've done something right. I guess I never stopped believing that." The sound of laughter carried across the square. The crowd began to thin as the event ended, leaving soft music playing under the string lights. Jake and Emily stayed behind, packing up tools and folding tables. When the last car drove away, the square grew quiet again. "You know," she said, "this isn't just your project anymore. It's a movement." Jake nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. "Then we'd better keep it moving." That night, as he locked the garage, Jake looked back one last time. Through the open window, he saw the shelves lined with repaired parts, neatly stacked batteries, and an old photograph of his father above the workbench. He whispered under his breath, "We did it, Dad." For a long time he stood there, letting the stillness wrap around him like a promise. Months passed, and wheels of hope spread far beyond Maple Springs. News outlets covered their expansion. Companies donated equipment, and even engineering students offered to design better mobility systems. Jake traveled across states, training other mechanics to start their own branches. But no matter how far he went, he always returned home, to the same small garage where it all began. That place had become more than a workshop. It was a symbol of second chances. On the first anniversary of Emily's repair, she surprised Jake with something special, a brand new sign for the shop. Painted in bold letters, it read, "Miller's Garage, where nothing's impossible." When Jake saw it, he couldn't speak. He just smiled, touched the sign gently and whispered, "That's perfect." Later that evening, the two of them sat under the stars, the town quiet again. "You ever think about what's next?" Emily asked. Jake leaned back, looking at the sky. "Next? Maybe build something bigger. Maybe teach others what we learned here. But no matter what happens, I'll never forget where it started. With one broken chair, one diner conversation, and one reason to keep believing." Emily smiled. "You gave me my freedom back, Jake." He shook his head slowly. "No, Emily, you gave me mine." The night breeze carried their laughter softly through the trees, and the world for a moment felt perfectly still. Two lives forever changed by a single act of compassion, proving that even in the smallest towns, miracles can roll on four wheels.